All right, so you're here because you like to really get into these big economic issues, right?
Hmm.
Figure out like what's actually going on,
Yeah,
not just the headlines.
absolutely.
So today we're diving deep into this video analysis about Europe
Yeah,
and kind of how it stacks up against the US economically. And I
yeah.
think it's really fascinating
It is.
because we all see these headlines all the time, right?
Okay.
But this goes a level deeper,
Yes,
and it's by an analyst who I think is really smart and has a good grasp of this stuff.
absolutely. A keen observer
Yeah.
of global economics.
So to get started, I mean, the video doesn't waste any time saying, okay,
Yeah,
Europe, a huge economic bloc, right?
yeah.
Second largest in the world.
That's right. The second largest in the world.
Yeah.
And it even points out that Germany just recently became the world's third largest single economy,
Oh, wow.
surpassing Japan.
Interesting.
So it's not about a lack of strength currently.
No, not at all. And I think this is something we've all kind of noticed, right? Like, if we've been paying attention to global economics,
Mhm.
is over the last couple of decades, maybe even longer, Europe's just not growing
Right.
at the same pace
Yeah.
as the US. And the video is actually, I think, really smart about this
Yeah.
because it also says, it's not just Europe. A lot of economies,
Yeah.
including China,
Yeah.
haven't kept pace with the US in terms of raw growth. So
Hmm.
is it something the US is doing right, or
Yeah.
is it something unique to Europe?
Yeah. Is the U.S. pulling ahead or is Europe falling behind?
Yeah, and I think the video does a really good job of laying that out and not
Absolutely.
just making it one side or the other.
Yeah. And so it avoids that simplistic narrative.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the video's value lies.
Right. And it also, to be fair to Europe, it says they do have these
Yeah.
advantages, right?
Yeah, fair.
Like a very educated workforce.
Absolutely. A
Yeah.
highly educated workforce earning competitive salaries.
Yeah, stable business environment.
Yeah. Known for its stability and its security, and a long history as being a central player in global commerce.
Yeah.
So the foundation is strong.
Okay, so we've got the landscape laid out, and then the video kind of gets into the why.
Okay.
And one of the first things it tackles, which is, I think, constantly in the news,
Yeah.
is immigration
It is.
and how that plays a role economically in Europe.
Right. And it's a really balanced take
Yeah.
because it shows you how you can frame the same story in very different ways,
Yeah,
depending on what source you're looking at.
exactly.
Well, one outlet might say, hey, look, immigration is this great thing. It solves labor shortages. It fuels economic expansion.
Yeah.
Another outlet might say, oh, this is just a policy failure. It's creating all these negative consequences.
Yeah.
And the video even says, you can use ground news as a tool
Oh, yeah.
to see these different viewpoints.
Which I think is a great tool, just
Yeah.
for anyone who wants to kind of get that broad picture of how things are being reported.
Exactly.
And it even uses, I think, a really good example, the you pay housing situation.
Yeah.
Because depending on whether you're looking at a more left-leaning source
Yeah.
or a more right-leaning source,
Yeah.
you get a completely different take on whether immigrants are,
Yeah.
the solution, providing the construction workers needed to,
To solve the housing shortage.
or whether they're exacerbating it by,
Yeah.
coming in and taking up the existing housing. So
Exactly.
it really shows you can't look at any one source and think,
Okay.
okay, I've got it figured out.
You got to look at multiple sources.
Yeah, multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think the video does a good job of encouraging that.
Yeah, it does.
So then it gets into how a population can grow its GDP,
Right.
and it kind of breaks it down into these 4 buckets.
4 buckets.
Yeah, like you either get better at what you do.
Better training,
Yeah, better training,
better tools, better resources.
better tools,
Yeah.
longer working hours,
Longer working hours. Yeah.
or you
Yeah.
just have more people.
Or you just have more people
Yeah,
contributing to the economy.
which makes it's kind of like that's how you grow an economy.
Those are really the 4 fundamental ways.
And then it gets into, looking at Europe's population trends, and it's like
Right.
the EU birth rate
Oh, yeah.
is below replacement level.
It is below replacement
So
level.
it's like, okay, if they want to grow their population, immigration
Yeah.
is a key driver there.
It is.
And it's not saying that's good or bad. It's just saying
It's
that's the reality.
that's the demographic reality.
And it actually acknowledges there are some potential positives there. Like
Right.
if you bring in people with the skills you need,
Right. Filling the gaps in the skills of the workforce.
yeah, and new people come in, they're spending money.
Yeah. Providing an immediate boost to the
Oh.
economy.
So it's not saying immigration is a bad thing, but then it draws this
Right.
really important distinction between the type of immigration
Yeah.
that
Like-
you see more of in the EU
Yeah.
versus places like Canada and Australia.
And that's key.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
So Canada and Australia they have a larger proportion of immigrants coming in on work visas
Okay.
or education visas.
So they're coming in with
Yeah.
the intention of contributing.
Exactly,
Right.
to work or to study.
Right.
Whereas the EU sees a much larger percentage of its immigration coming in through family reunification permits
Okay.
or asylum seekers,
Yeah.
which are really important categories.
Of course, from a social and humanitarian.
From a social and humanitarian
You
standpoint.
can't argue with that.
Of course not.
But the video's point is like
It does highlight
that might not provide the same level
of immediate, direct
of
economic.
day one, they're coming to work.
Yeah, whereas someone coming in to reunite with their family,
Right.
they might not have a job lined up.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's just a different.
It's just a different category
Right.
of immigration.
And then it also gets into this other really, I think, key point, which is you've got all this immigration happening, but then you also have
Yeah.
highly educated Europeans leaving.
Right, they're leaving for better opportunities.
Yeah. And that mentions this figure.
2.5 million.
Yeah, 2.5 million.
Yeah.
And they're mostly going.
They're largely attracted by higher salaries, more dynamic job markets,
Yeah.
tech and finance sectors of the U.S.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it makes the point, it's not like immigration where there's all these different
Yeah.
reasons why people come in.
Yeah.
These people are leaving primarily for jobs.
For work.
Yeah. And it even uses the phrase brain drain to
does.
describe that
That's-
phenomenon.
Yeah.
Okay, so then it shifts gears a little bit and starts talking about like the overall kind of
Yeah.
how much are people working.
Economic activity.
Yeah, labor force participation.
Yeah.
And it says that actually the Euro area has a higher labor force participation rate
It does.
than the U.S.
Yeah. Which sounds positive on the surface,
Right.
but there's more to the story.
There's a.
There's a big but.
Tell me about the but.
Well, the labor force participation rate includes people who are unemployed, but actively looking for work.
So they're counted,
They are counted.
even though they're not
Yeah.
actually employed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And unemployment in the EU is currently at its lowest point since the EU's formation.
So that's a good.
It's a good thing,
Yeah.
but it's still generally higher
Yeah.
than in the United States.
And it also gets into, I think,
Hours.
yes, working hours.
Like how much time people are spending on the job.
How much time people are actually working.
And it says major European economies.
France, Spain, Italy, and Germany,
Oh, yeah.
they spend considerably less time
Yeah.
on the job each week
Compared.
than their counterparts in the U.S.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so there's that.
Not only do they have higher unemployment, but they're also spending a lot of time working. So
Yeah,
it kind of, I think, is implying that that could be a
it's
factor
potentially a factor.
in this difference
Yeah,
in
in
productivity.
the overall productivity.
And then it kind of makes this, I think, kind of sobering point that the increase in Europe's labor force participation
Right.
isn't necessarily all this like booming new industry.
It's not.
It's older people having to work longer.
It's older individuals needing to work longer to make ends meet
Yeah.
just for survival.
So then it's like, all right, if we can't necessarily boost the population through immigration
Yeah.
and we're not going to work longer hours,
Mm-hmm.
then
On what?
it gets into these buckets of better tools and better resources.
Right. Better tools and better resources.
And I think that really boils down to energy
Yeah.
and innovation.
Exactly.
So let's start with energy
Yeah.
because it really emphasizes this link
A
between
strong link.
how much energy a society uses
Yeah.
and its overall wealth.
It's very strong.
Yeah. And it even I think throws back to
A little nod to our previous discussion
the Iceland.
about Iceland.
Yeah.
With its unique situation with geothermal energy. Yeah, it's like they've got this almost like free energy glitch.
Free energy.
So it's a good example, but then it's like, okay,
right.
Europe as a whole, not like that.
Not quite like that.
Yeah, they don't have these like huge domestic reserves
No, they don't.
of fossil fuels.
They lack significant domestic reserve.
And it's like, yeah, you've got Norway and the UK with
With the North Sea.
the North Sea,
Yeah.
oil and gas, but that's not real.
And the Netherlands
Europe.
used to be a major natural gas producer, but they've been reducing their output.